Mm-hmm.
29, 28, 27. You are getting sleepier. 26, 25. I love it. Blast off.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Paranormal Encyclopedia.
Live from Area 51, an undisclosed location.
No,
sure. For those of you who are wondering, we're no longer on Facebook because Facebook's being a pain in our ass. But I am, as always, your host, Kevin Mears, demonologist, and the Paranormal Encyclopedia, and these two chuckleheads.
Brian McKinley, vampire author.
Godfather of vampire fiction.
Mm-hmm. And Baron Voltage, recreational hypnotist, stage hypnotist, and occasional medium that I'm never.
And kind of the star of tonight's show, really, since we're talking hypnotism.
Oh, sure we are.
And that's your area of expertise. So, first of all, we've got to do a couple of bits of business. One is dealing with, of course, Audible. So, folks, if any of you out there are fans of books, and if you aren't, you're probably listening to the wrong show.
Yeah, really.
If you don't have an Audible account, you want to check it out. So audibletrial.com/paranormale. Audible is a fantastic resource of tens of thousands of audiobooks. There's sci-fi, fantasy, horror, fiction, non-fiction. There's plenty of stuff on the paranormal.
My stuff.
Reference
all
stuff.
of Brian's books are on there. I just finished listening to a very fun series called Kitty Norville.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Which is about a werewolf talk show host.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
By the name of Carrie Vaughn. Those books were all on there. If you sign up using our link, you get a free 1-month membership and you get a free audiobook. The audiobook is yours to keep, even if you cancel the membership. So it helps out the show, and you get an awesome audiobook. So it's worth checking out. As some of you may know from both we talked about it last week and from Facebook, Virgo Triad was supposed to be our guest tonight. You may have gathered by what I said earlier that she's not. Sadly, Virgo's dealing with some personal stuff, so she's not going to be available this week. I'm not sure about next week. I suspect not, but we will be rescheduling that interview in the near future. In the meanwhile, she did ask me to promote her stuff, so please go to YouTube and check out Virgo Triad. Especially, she's got a big thing she's doing right now where she's trying to do GoFundMe to get a website going, because I don't know if anyone listening is aware of this, but a lot of the anti-scam YouTube channels like Virgo's are under attack right now by the con artists. They're paying people to do mass downvotes and things like that and trying to force them off of YouTube.
Oh, nice.
So she's trying to create her own website as an independent thing, not be subject to all of that. She's got a new book that's coming out with a ton of research from like the FBI and experts in scams. If you donate enough money, you'll get that. It's something worth checking out. She's a great friend of the show. If you've got a buck or two, consider giving her a hand.
She is awesome.
But tonight, we've been discussing this for a while. So tonight we're actually starting the discussion that's going to lead into a discussion of the satanic ritual abuse panic of the 70s onward, really.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't stopped, depressingly enough.
But, it might be an interesting idea to start with the concept of repressed memories.
Well, which is why we're starting with hypnotism in general and repressed memories.
Define all that.
I can do what I can to sort of touch on that a bit. I mean, a lot of aspects of hypnosis is interaction with the subconscious as well as the conscious mind. And then in sort of like that same basket is the best way to put it. You do have a lot of aspects of a person's memory, their perceived memory, because ultimately when you're remembering something, you're not remembering the event. You're remembering a memory of the event. And it just consistently evolves in and of itself. And whenever you've got any kind of, I guess you could call it, guidance as to what that memory might have been, it can manipulate it to a point where your subconscious will either activate its own defense mechanism and have you end up believing what it is that they're telling you happened, and it's a whole mess and rigmarole that happened.
Well, I just because doing some research for this, newer studies on memory suggest that every time you remember something, your brain subtly changes the memory.
Yes, just slightly.
Which is funny because we tend to think that our memories are like photographs or recordings of something that happened when it's actually not that way at all.
Right. I mean, 90% of the time, whenever you're dealing with any kind of bit with memory, you're remembering the key points, and then your subconscious is filling in the gaps that would make the most logical sense. This is the reason why arguments between people about stuff that's happened before will be very heated, because both people will remember it exactly in their mind completely differently.
Yeah. Also, the memory is stored by the emotional part of the brain rather than the logical part, which is something I learned.
Yes.
And it plays into why trauma is such a problem, psychological trauma.
It very much is. And, coming from somebody that has a lot of memory issues, I did a lot of research into this. People with eidetic memory, that's an actual disability. That's not an advantage. Because when your mind is processing things, it's not processing just the key points and filling in the gaps, which, as most of us can do. What it's doing is it's making every single aspect a key point, and that puts a lot of strain on the brain and the emotional centers. So in a way, it's a disability. I feel bad for folks that have an eidetic memory.
In general, it's a gift that we don't remember. People don't think of it that way. It's a gift we don't remember everything with perfect clarity.
Yeah.
Think even aside from that, which is completely correct, and I'm not disagreeing with Paranormal, I agree with him, but think about the more subtle thing of having a perfect memory. Do you really want to remember exactly how many times you brushed each tooth each morning every day for your entire life?
Yeah. How much crowding that takes.
It sounds like something that a devil's deal will actually try and twist into you. You will remember everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's so much dull mundanity that we just process out. And another problem that you have with this idea of repressed memories is it's founded on this idea that we repress memories of trauma. And that, but more than that, that we repress them in our subconscious and then they can be retrieved.
Well, I mean, there's the aspect with a lot of bits with the hypnosis in particular, especially when you're interfacing somebody with hypnosis, where it involves interacting with that memory, as well as what it is that we get every single day that we process as mundane.
True, but the thing is, if the way memory works of an event is you either remember the event or you don't. There is a subconscious. There are things in your subconscious. But if a memory is gone, it's gone. You're not going to magically bring it back.
There's some different schools of thought on that.
Here we
really?
go.
Yeah, most of the psychology I've read on it says that repressed memories itself is not a thing.
Repressed memory, well, that's just it. It's an idea of either it is or it isn't. Repressed memory can exist. People can have it because some people with, I guess you could call it, remembrances of traumatic events in their lives, legitimate, the memory will be repressed until something comes along to actually trigger it and kick it back into gear. And that in and of itself, I mean, that's the definition of a repressed memory. A memory that is purposely being held back, but never gone. It's an electrical impulse that's following through a pattern that doesn't go away.
Well, it's like the difference between there's memory and then there's recall.
Yes. Recall
is what you consciously can access.
Yes.
But memory is there sometimes that
the other thing is, I mean,
you don't have access to.
The perfect example I've seen given is when you look at Holocaust survivors, which went through some of the most traumatic things imaginable. Most of them don't report having problems forgetting things. They wish they could. Trauma, that kind of trauma is, at least in those cases, was indelibly engraved into their brain in a way that they can't forget.
With that, that's almost like a Pavlovian response and a behavioral conditioning where every single aspect of your life that is of the mundane for however period of time that you're going through it becomes associated with those traumatic events. Walking involves a traumatic event that may have happened to these poor folks while they were walking out of wherever it was that they may have slept within the camps. Going to the bathroom involves a traumatic event where either A, you're around a lot of people, or you have nowhere to go for it.
Or, oh God, just taking a shower.
Yeah, exactly. Or taking a shower for that matter. Everything that's mundane was immediately associated with a traumatic memory. So yeah, it's going to be nigh impossible for any of those memories to go away.
Also, it becomes tied to their identity.
Exactly, because for that matter, every single little bit of your identity is completely destroyed. They purposely made sure that nobody was an individual, they were just a number. And that, I mean, there's I could go on for shows upon shows about how screwed up that is.
But the way trauma works a lot of times is it depends on what kind of emotions you're associating. With repressed memory, it's usually things that you're telling yourself are shameful that you shouldn't remember because this shouldn't have happened or something along those lines.
In which case, then, it wasn't necessarily an aspect of your life that was tied to the mundane. It was more along the lines of your body using a self-defense mechanism so that it doesn't interfere with the mundane. If they were consistently exposed to that traumatic memory over and over and over and over again until it became tied to a mundane thing, well, then we're talking about, you know, modifying a person's personality a bit. If it's traumatic enough but not frequent, or it's traumatic enough and it happened as infrequently as some people's traumatic events, then yeah, the brain will be like, okay, this isn't tied to anything mundane. I'm just going to shove this back here for a little bit so that this way it doesn't destroy any other aspects or anything else mundane. You know, it's like training a machine how to work when there's a wrench in the gears. It could work. It won't work long, but it could work. It'll eventually work if you consistently have the wrench in the gears. But if you know that the wrench is only going to be in there once a while, then it knows to actually not work whenever the wrench is in the gears.
Yeah. Well, the bottom line I think we're getting at is memory is unreliable in the extremes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And that's half of what I enjoy doing most when it comes to that.
One of my favorite quotes on the subject, I think, is from Adam Conover from Adam Ruins Everything, where he describes memory as a Wikipedia page that anyone can edit.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And as the hypnotist, that's my favorite thing to do. In particular, with a lot of the ways that the mind works.
Do you like Memento and how that dealt with memory?
I take that as a no.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started. It has a yes, it has a no. It has some twists. It has some dramatic aspects. I can't speak to the expertise on it because I heard that was more or less based on an actual individual. I think his name was like Stevie 5 times. It's Stevie 5 because he could only remember something for 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah, it is. There's actual legitimate brain injury that causes that particular. Well, I mean, it was dramatized.
It's
obviously.
a sad thing.
Something Amisha was just commenting in the chat as well is with blackout drunks. And for those listening, because I know you guys will know it, but a blackout is not the same as passing out. In medical terms, blacking out is not remembering what you're doing, not falling unconscious.
Different part of the personality takes over.
What's fascinating here, as Amisha pointed out, is when you're blackout drunk, it's not that the alcohol's wiping away the memory, it's that it's interfering with the part of the brain that makes memory, so the memory isn't there at all.
Yes. It's just not forming them.
Exactly. It's an impairment of cognition. Well, that kind of kicks into exactly what is hypnosis.
Yes.
And what it is that it messes with. And by messes with, I mean if you're a skilled hypnotist, you can play with. If you're a skilled subject, you can learn to play with on your own. Or some of the fun stuff that I can do, as well as some of the stuff that is possible to be abused when it comes to it. Because 99.9999999% of hypnosis is safe if it's done correctly. It's that 0.01% where it cannot be. Now, hypnosis, for those of us that probably have not been around when I first discussed this, like what, 2 or 3 months ago?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Although it came up last
it did come up, and that's all kinds of awesome with that. Your mind is basically like a office building, and the aspects of your conscious and subconscious have the penthouse floor with 2 offices, and in the middle is a secretary desk with Roz from Monsters, Inc.
Wazowski!
What's up, Wazowski?
Now,
Where's the TPS reports?
no. And she handles all the mundane stuff, all the external stimuli and everything that comes at her. If something comes along that you already know what it is, I already know what this is, goes into the out bin. Already know what this is, goes into the out bin. The only time whenever she puts something in the inbox for the subconscious and conscious to hear is something that it has not experienced before, or something that the brain processes as not mundane. As a hypnotist, I am always looking for people that want to be hypnotized, because when you don't want to be hypnotized, Roz sends me out of the office and tells me to go the hell away. If you do want to be hypnotized, she's like, okay, I'm going to take lunch for about a good 10 minutes. You can go talk to them. And once they do want to be hypnotized, legitimately, enthusiastically, however you want to put it, I will go in there, and what I will do is I will talk to the subconscious first, after I put the person down into what I call trance. Okay, it's a standard process. I put somebody down to trance. I implant suggestions, I put them through sensations, whatever it is that was previously negotiated. Because with all hypnotism, it's all negotiation, regardless of how you want to flavor it or name it. It's all about talking about what you want to experience, what you want to go through. Boom, solved.
And consent is important.
Yes, beyond.
Yes.
So beyond. I mean, it should be a given, but you'd be surprised how many people you just want to...
Well, it bears being said.
Yeah, I know, and that's sad that it has to be said, but it does have to be said. Once you have the consent and I got you down there and I put in whatever it is that I put in, I could choose to either keep you down there so that you might experience things while you're in trance, or take you out of it and do what's known as a post-hypnotic trigger. Now, when I got you in trance, Roz is on a lunch break. When I start planting in suggestions, however, that's when I'm talking to your subconscious and I'm saying, you want to what? I think this would be a good idea. I'll give you a good example. If I have a glass of water and I say, you want to know what? I think that you're going to think that this water is Kool-Aid. Your subconscious is going to be like, I would like Kool-Aid. That would be kind of awesome. If every single time I drank water, I thought it was Kool-Aid. I'm going to taste it. It's my favorite type of Kool-Aid. I may be specific. I may not be specific. So what I'll do is I'll say, yeah, how about you do that? That's going to be a nice little hypnotic trigger for you. You're going to like that, right? Yeah, I'm going to love it. Let me go tell the conscious mind that that's exactly what we're going to do. All right, no problem. It takes that little bit of suggestion, goes it over to the consciousness takes a look in the office and goes, yeah, I think this is a really good idea. And you know what? Since you're telling me to do this and I think this is great, okay, no problem. I'm giving it my stamp of approval. Folds it up and then immediately puts it into the outbox in Roz's desk. Now, whatever is in Roz's desk, the brain immediately processes as fact, or at least perceived fact. And if I choose to bring the person out of trance at that point, I bring them out. And what they end up doing is, they see a glass of water, they're like, ooh, Kool-Aid. And they will drink it, and if I've gotten enough of a rapport with the individual subject, they will taste the Kool-Aid. This goes for turning water into any liquid whatsoever. Water in particular looks very much like, I don't know.
Vodka?
Yes. Thank you for saying it for me, because I wasn't going to say it. But yes, you can have a lot of fun with this, especially when somebody's getting drunk on water. It's fun.
In the safe way, because you can actually get drunk on water.
Yes. And, you know, I mean, the same thing with iced tea. What does that look like? Whiskey? Rum?
Yep.
You don't know. Tequila? Okay, go ahead. And the thing is as long as the person has in their mind a memory of what those fluids taste like, it becomes that much easier and that much more powerful. And that's just a sense of taste.
Yeah. So it wouldn't work on me.
Or sense of sight, or sense of smell, or sense of touch, or sense of awareness, or even the memory. I can make a person forget who they are, where they're from, or completely and totally modify any events within their mind that they have consented to. Now, what happens if I end up putting a suggestion in there that somebody does not want or does not like? There's an aspect in the mind through hypnosis that's called agency, which immediately shuts down any suggestions that they do not approve of. This is why it's always said, hypnotists can't make somebody do something they don't want to do. Because if the mind has enough agency to realize right and wrong, want and not want, which most people do, most, okay? The mind will immediately kick its agency on, and then it goes, hasta lasagna. No more, I don't want that, it's gone. Simple enough, right? I mean,
yeah.
I could simplify it easier, but
I think we've got smart listeners, and I think it's a good explanation.
I'm hoping. And here's the lovely little aspect here. The hypnotist isn't doing a damn thing. Here's what the hypnotist is doing. It's giving you an idea. You're the one that's doing all the work as the subject. That's it. You're thinking it, you're imagining it, you're perceiving it, you're accepting it. That's it. It's just up to me, the hypnotist, to, I guess you could say, guide you to it. It's like I can show you the door. It's up to you to open it. And it's even more up to you to walk through it. Just remember to close the door behind you. Now, once I've got the subject into that suggestion, once I've got the suggestion going, and I tell them I'm going to bring them back up, what I also do is I put what I call exit triggers, which are basically you're going to have this trigger in your mind as long as you feel that you want to do it. Or if it was previously negotiated, it will be like, okay, it'll only last an hour or the night, whatever. And you will feel refreshed, you'll feel nice, you'll feel okay. And they'll come up, they'll feel nice, they'll refresh, they'll be okay. Now, boom, it lasts as long as they want. Here's the bit. It is not mind control, and it is not normal for somebody to fall asleep while they're in trance. They can, but it's not necessarily something that we do. You're always 100% aware of everything that happens to you while you're in trance. If a door slams in the room, boom, you're out of trance. You're aware of it. You hear it. You just don't care. You know, and most people's agency, which is basically the emergency intercom directly to Roz, will immediately be like, hey, something just happened here. You need to wake the heck up. And boom, comes right back up.
Lunch break's over.
Yep, break's over. I'm back from lunch.
What have you been doing in my desk, Rakowski?
You know, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, and that's sort of the basis of hypnosis. And, you know, when we start off on the second half, I'll go into the ways that it can end up getting abused, which
Yes.
will easily flow into the whole bit with the panic.
And the thing is, a lot of the things that you're talking about, people have this idea that you need hypnosis to do this. You don't.
No, it's a guidance of willpower. That's all it is.
And it's a big one that came up again in the period that we're moving towards is suggestive questioning, what they call leading questions.
Yes.
And especially from an authority figure, you can get somebody to honestly remember something that never happened if you put enough pressure on them.
And that's a variance of
false confession.
Yeah, it's a variance on what we call neuro-linguistic programming. It's not necessarily hypnosis. It's more of, I guess you could call it visual encouragement and tonal encouragement in order to be able to get a result. I can give you a number of examples right off the top of my head.
It's like lawyers asking leading questions.
Yes, hence the reason
court.
why it's immediately objected.
Yeah, and should be.
And yes. I'll think of the most harmless one imaginable. An example of NLP. Don't think of elephants. What are you thinking of?
Elephants.
Exactly. You didn't want to think of elephants. I told you not to think of elephants, but what'd you do? You thought of elephants. Unwilling, immediately hits in. One of the more famous examples that most of us of our generation will remember, the late Billy Mays. Billy Mays was a infomercial wizard, but he was also a god amongst those of NLP, because he had what was known as physical presence and made sure that the audience's focus was drawn to whatever the product is. No matter what it was, he always drew the audience with his hands, which would be a focus. And as a magician, you would know about this, Kev. Okay, you draw focus to the individual product, and then you push it forward. So that this way, I'm here to talk about this. I want you to have this. It is something that you like. It is great. It is awesome. And what he'd do is he'd use the tone of his voice to express excitement. It's an advertising bit too, you know, and it's, I'm excited about this. You should be too, because I'm telling you about it.
And this is all about how magicians do what we do. What we do.
Every annoying car commercial out there, radio sounds like they're yelling.
Oh,
and,
yes.
You know, it's the most exciting thing ever, and you're like, shut up.
Yeah, Crazy Eddie from the 80s.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. I remember Crazy Eddie.
For some of us that were a bit older and we remember those car commercials, there's a good example.
Yeah.
I'll throw one here that many of us have read in the history books. Adolf Hitler. Was a prime example of somebody that knew exactly how to use NLP. He was consulted by a expert on the topic in and of itself when it came to public speaking. And something we also do as public speakers is draw attention to yourself, get the audience engaged, get them excited, use the tone of your voice to emphasize key points, so that this way, when things get talked about, everybody else is excited.
Those gestures that he used.
Yes.
What gets frightening, again, on topic, is how easy, especially with the creation of memory, how easy this is to do without meaning to.
Yes.
Because the problem you have with the abuse that we're talking around, because we want to build a framework, is you had a bunch of so let me real quick define it, just so it'll be more useful. So if anyone doesn't know, in the 1970s and 80s, and it's tapered off, but it does continue, there was a panic throughout the United States, particularly in the Bible Belt, but it spread just about everywhere.
Yeah, there are other countries.
That children were being sexually abused, which is horrible enough, but specifically that it was being part of an elaborate satanic cult that was all over the country, all over the world, secretly in the highest echelons of power, and they were covering things up. They were running preschools. There's a very famous one. It was up to that time the longest court trial in U.S. history, the McMartin preschool trial, where children reported being horribly tortured, sexually abused by people working at the McMartin preschool, and I believe it was California. And vivid memories of things that were happening to them, talking about these underground tunnels. And here's the thing. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
Most of the children later recanted their testimony. The elaborate underground tunnels they gave in great detail don't exist.
Yeah, especially not in California.
All of the, I believe it was 11 accused people were found innocent in court. But where this gets frightening, it wasn't the children lied per se. They honestly believed they had been abused. The people who were questioning them honestly believed that they had been abused. It was a colossal series of errors by a bunch of very well-meaning people.
They say that, hell is paved with good intent, and most people, the moment that they hear that a kid is involved, the passion gets hit there, and you immediately presume guilt. Especially when you presume that whatever comes out of the mouth of a child is immediately perceived as truth.
Yeah.
No, I'm not downplaying.
Yeah.
Which
not
if you've ever,
downplaying it.
And that's a critical point in this ongoing discussion is going to be, we're not dismissing the reality of sexual abuse.
No, not at all.
The recent horrible allegations that have come to light about the Roman Catholic, additional really at this point, about the Catholic Church with a bunch of cover-ups in Pennsylvania. And for that matter, and I will not in any way attempt to justify the Catholic Church. Here's one you don't hear about as often. Those guys who always show up at your door, do you have a minute to talk about Jesus Christ? The Jehovah's Witnesses?
Oh, yeah.
There's a massive scandal going on right now with the governing body, the head honchos that run their show have been covering up thousands of known cases of pedophiles. They lost a massive lawsuit in Australia to the Royal Commission where they've been fined millions of dollars. If you've heard about how Kingdom Halls are being shut down and consolidated and things like that, this is why.
Yep.
And it annoys me to no end that people aren't talking about this.
Yeah.
But this is a real thing. This is a serious concern. The problem is in the nature of questioning.
Yes.
If a kid comes to you and says something's happening, it's one thing. If you go to a kid it's a joke that's been repeated a million times, but it's been repeated for a reason. Show me on the doll where he touched you. You're immediately you're not. Did he touch you? You're immediately saying he touched you. And a kid especially, it happens with adults too, very much. With a kid, there's an expectation. Well, an adult's telling me to do something. I need to do it. I need to please, especially an authority figure, a teacher, or a police officer. Well, they must have touched me. Maybe I just don't remember it. Well, okay. And then the easy thing, wait, is that the only place they touched you? It's real easy to get them to move to where you want on the doll. Because you think you're just trying to get more information. Because, okay, well, this kid's been abused. We have to figure out what was done to them.
Yeah,
well, they're going to be shy to tell us. We need to prod them.
I'll throw you one better. There was a recent court case that was involving Brendan Dassey was giving a collaborative testimony. And this was out in Wisconsin. For those that haven't watched the Netflix series Making a Murderer, the police confession that he gave, they released the videotape, and the entire time it was 6 hours of an interrogation that was nothing but leading questions until they got nothing but what the cops wanted to hear. And the kid was completely and totally, he's on the spectrum,
so he's even easier to
manipulate. Had no idea that he was under arrest. And the cops made sure that they didn't say that, as well as little bits is that where he shot her? Little bits like that, and it was they are actually doing this.
Yeah.
This is also why, folks, as much as I'm pro-police and pro-law enforcement, if you get called in for questioning for anything, keep your mouth shut till you get a lawyer.
Yeah. Sadly, it's true.
And he had no lawyer present. His parent or guardian tried to get in, and they wouldn't let it.
Yeah, they weren't supposed to go for that long either. There are laws against
no, they violated all kinds of laws.
Oh yeah.
It's I'm sorry. I've never been questioned by the police beyond do you know how fast you were going? Which is a whole different issue. But if you're taken into a police station, it's called I want my lawyer. I want my lawyer, and until then, I'm choosing to remain silent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
And again, it's not that the cops are going to try and dick you over, but mistakes happen.
yes.
Yeah.
We're on the half-hour mark, so I do want to give out the number. So, folks, if you're enjoying this so far, or if you hate everything we're doing, feel free to call in and let us know. 609-807-2492, 609-807-2492.
You will call.
I will also say, you don't have to wait till we give out the number to call in. Just feel free to call in at any time.
It's on there on the screen. That's why.
Yeah.
It's totally awesome. Subscribe.
Don't worry, Baron's the only one who bites, being the whole vampire thing, and we keep a good leash on him.
Yeah. Sure you do.
Well, you haven't bitten anyone yet.
That you know of.
You haven't bitten anyone yet during the show.
That's accurate. Okay. now we're actually trailing into fact territory.
Yeah.
All right. So, to give a little bit on the neurolinguistic bit, neurolinguistics is a study that was perfected, I guess you could say, during the times when we started to learn that conversational structure can lead to individual control. What we had were various bits of comedians that would come up with varying jokes to actually make somebody become the source of a punchline. I'll give a perfect example of here, a little bit of a verbal combat. It's the best way to put it. A guy walks up to another person and says, "Hey, you want to go out for a pizza and $500?" And the guy's like, "I'm not gonna. What? No." He's like, "What? So you don't like pizza?" Little verbiage there,
So how long have you been beating your wife?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Little bits of leading, and eventually it turned into almost a science. There's varying bits of Pavlovian conditioning, like for instance with a lot of the religious fervor that I noticed was getting really massive in the 60s and 70s, thinking of Jonestown in particular, the formation of the Branch Davidians during the 80s and 90s when you had David Koresh in there, varying bits with Marshall Applewhite and L. Ron Hubbard. And then you've got varying aspects of tonal sermon, which, let's face it, is where the most occurs. You whip people up into a fervor and they'll believe anything. It does not matter what it is. It could be religious, it could be social justice, it could be whatever.
Well, you want another good example of this that's less destructive as an Applewhite or a Jonestown. Look at faith healers, and particularly the Pentecostal movement in general.
Oh, yes.
Folks, there's a whole thing, and I'm about to tread on thin ice for fellow Christians that may be listening there. But so let's clarify some things. Most of the time when people get all hyped up about the whole speaking in tongues, it's psychological, it's not spiritual. I'm not, to be clear, to preface this, I am not saying that speaking of tongues isn't, as a spiritual phenomenon, isn't a thing. Although, frankly, I tend to define it. Okay, when I say speaking of tongues, I think of the miracle of Pentecost. For those of you who don't know, the miracle of Pentecost is that after the death and the resurrection of Christ, they were visited, the Holy Spirit came down, they were each touched. They went out and they started preaching the gospel, and everyone who heard them in their native language.
That's it.
That, to me, is the miracle of speaking of tongues. It serves a purpose. In churches, you'll get people who will stand there and they start spouting off what sounds like a language, and then one person in the audience can interpret it, but whenever this has been shown to linguists and things like that, it's what they call glossalia.
Plant.
It sounds like language, but it isn't.
Plant.
Plant?
Plant. That's a plant. The person that they're talking to in the audience is a plant. That's all.
Not always. That's the thing, and that's what you're absolutely right. Some of the time, it's a plant. What I'm getting at, though, is you get all these people together, you hype them up, you play music, dancing, because Pentecostal services are much livelier than Catholic services.
Oh, yes.
You whip them up in this kind of fervor that we're talking about.
Oh, yes.
You tell them about this remarkable ability of the speaking in tongues. And eventually, somebody's going to start speaking gibberish.
Oh, yeah.
And just as much, someone else can just as easily think they understand what that gibberish means. And the first person who stands up and is like, well, what they're saying is,
Yep.
And it's not
Everybody
always
wants to be
it
special.
It certainly can be a plan, and certainly when you're dealing with the heavier faith healers, the ones that you see on TV, very often you are dealing with plants, although not always then either.
Well, I mean, usually I can tell if it's a situation with the plant where after they tell you about all the wonderful work that they're doing, they're saying, and you too can be part of this thing. Just give us your credit card number.
Yeah.
You know, and that's usually a very
they do
big
use
red
other
flag.
They use other techniques. A really good example. Let me double check because I don't want to insult this guy unless I got the name right.
Oh, no, not at all.
I mean, that's fair.
That's understandable.
But there's a very famous televangelist.
Billy Graham.
No, not the one I mean.
Though he was bad enough.
I think there's even a
Yep,
passage.
I was right. Peter Popoff.
Oh, gosh.
So Peter
Wow,
Popoff had this
yes.
great, from a magician standpoint, this brilliant routine. From a religious standpoint, what he did was horrible.
King of neurolinguistics of the 80s. Like you would not believe.
Yes.
But he would walk into an audience, and your name is such and such. You're suffering from. He knew what they were suffering from. He knew where they lived. He knew their doctor. Not one of the people he did this for was a plant. Because what actually would happen was before his performances, his crew would circulate among the audience. They'd ask people, "So what are you here for?" And they write all this information down, write visual cues about who it is. This would all be then given to his wife.
It's a mentalist act.
Who's backstage on a radio.
And he had an earpiece in his ear.
And she broadcast him information. So he didn't need plants, per se. Because usually even they were upfront about, no, the crew. And, well, we need to make a prayer card for you so that we know what you need prayed for. So even if we can't get to you during the show, then they'll pray for you after the show.
Oh, yes.
Look it up. If you don't believe us, because we're always about check it for yourselves. James the Amazing Randi, the famous skeptic magician, managed to hack into the radio broadcasts and broadcast them live on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show.
Loved it. I mean, the thing is that I'm not even that openly religious. I'm, I have my own beliefs and my own aspects, one or the other. But, there is nothing more satisfying than watching a fraud go down in flames.
Oh, yes.
Oh, gosh, yes. Now, to kick back in a little bit, especially with folks like Popoff and whatnot, the ones that say you will feel a great wondrous feeling when you actually give. And what happens is this. They give these people their money, and suddenly they feel a welling of happiness. And it becomes addictive. This is how people end up spending themselves into poorhouse giving. I think there was like some report of a woman that actually gave close to about $126,000 to their church.
Tragically, there's several reports of that nature. Of people who've donated life savings.
And you kind of wonder, like, what were they thinking per se? I mean, was it really they were feeling the faith, or was it because they were addicted to the feeling of, like, giving something?
This is an important note as well, and it goes to our discussions with Virgo. People have this idea of, well, these people are just, I hear it all the time, religious people are stupid, naive, gullible. And it's like, no, you're not understanding the nature of the beast, because you're dealing with the situation of neurolinguistic programming and group mentality and the way they reinforce each other.
Look at all these people that are happy because they're giving. You want to be happy too?
Yeah,
I know you want to come in and you want to be part of something that is great.
Yeah, people.
See what I was doing there?
Yep. Yeah. People naturally want to belong to a group.
There it is.
They want to be part.
They can tell we're among the good guys because we don't pull this stuff when we're asking you for money, nor will we ever.
We only want you to subscribe.
just him.
Just subscribe.
Well, no, subscribe.
Yes.
Because
subscribe to our channel.
Subscribing doesn't cost you any money.
Nothing at all. All you want to do is you get to watch Three Stooges up on a panel here talking about all the funniest stuff that could possibly be unimaginable.
And we want to say
making our stage manager laugh our ass off and our producer giggle left and right. It's great.
We want to thank our subscribers as well, because our numbers are going up, and that is awesome.
Yes.
I want to say our current number is at 411.
Oh.
Nice.
Remember as well, folks, you get us to that 500, we're going to do something special.
Yes. I promise that when I sing and dance, it will not scare you people away.
I was going to say, I promise it's not going to be me jingling keys. I promise it's not. Yeah, it's not going to be that.
I think it's very. Very least, Baron, you should have hypnotized Brian and we get him to cluck like a chicken or something silly.
No, I wouldn't do that. I'd make him think that he was actually you.
Oh, that'd be even funnier.
Oh, jeez. That'd be.
That just made our producer laugh.
Yes. Oh, it made everybody laugh. And Brian, you've agreed to be hypnotized before.
Yeah, under the right circumstances, yes.
And it wouldn't be that difficult, really. I think I've got your modalities pretty down pat. That's something else that I also want to talk about whenever it comes to hypnosis. Usually, if you want an effect to really take hold, it has to be between a hypnotist and a subject to have a very strong bit of rapport, which means, and this is the one thing I always tell people, get to know the person you're getting hypnotized by. Because you know what? You are putting a bit of trust in them not to do anything screwy in there.
Yeah.
You know, you are messing with the mind. It's a very powerful tool.
Oh, God, yes.
You know?
So I'm willing to try the water tasting like Kool-Aid thing, like, you know, because honestly, I could drink more water.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
That would not be a bad
We could
thing
all
for
drink
me.
more water.
Oh, yes. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, I also try and put in a trigger into somebody's mind where if they ever feel a little bit too stressed or they feel like they need to focus their mind, they could drop themselves down to trance. And people have described trance to me like this. It feels like that sensation you have when you first wake up in the morning, but you're still kind of in that dream state, but you haven't quite woken up yet. That nice, relaxed sensation. And it's like, oh, I don't want to get up because this feels so good.
And the neurological studies back that up. I mean, neurological studies of how the brain reacts under trance states, be it through hypnosis, meditation, are very similar to listening to extremely relaxing music.
Oh yes, and it creates some of the best hyper focus that you could ever have.
Doesn't prayer sort of generate a similar?
Yes, absolutely.
Like for the
It
religious
does.
among us, you know.
Prayer also taps into the same part of the brain.
Yeah.
Brian's absolutely
That's
right.
why people like it.
It's fun.
I mean, 2,000 years, it's still around, so
And-
obviously it serves a
And for that matter, hypnosis and trance state and meditation have all, pretty much since the beginning, has been associated with religion.
Yes, ever since Franz Mesmer said that, it has something to do with the psychological aspect of animal magnetism.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, yes.
We definitely need to cover Mesmer's a show on his own.
Oh,
easily.
yes. He's the granddaddy of the hypno.
And what a quack with the magnet, with the animal magnet. I mean, Benjamin Franklin proved the animal magnetism thing wrong.
Hey,
True. He had some things, but he did do.
Oh no, he did some very important
great,
things.
Some great things. He almost stopped a war, according to an interesting story.
I hadn't heard. I know one of the great magicians of all time, Robert Houdin, actually stopped a war.
There was Mesmer did something similar.
I'll stop a clock with my face. That's about as close as I'll get. There's also the concept of somebody using mental power and mentalism, as well as various bits of hypnotist to interface with something to stop a frog's heart from beating. Wasn't that Nina Kulagina?
Nina Kulagina.
Yes.
I remember that because of The Frighteners and Jeffrey Combs'
Yes.
wonderful performance.
Yes, Jeffrey Combs is the
Look,
man.
look for
Oh
that
my
matter
God,
at
so
the
good.
studies of Hindu yogis and things like that, and slowing the heart rates down.
Oh yes, it's all trance state. It's all a hyper relaxed meditative trance state. In whatever flavor you want to call it. You can call it meditation, you could call it yoga, you can call it whatever. As long as you get yourself hyper relaxed and you allow somebody into your mind, it's hypnosis. If you're doing it specifically just for a goal for yourself, it's meditation. If you're doing it for the sake of health, the self-healing, it's called yoga. Whatever you want to call it.
Interestingly enough, I'd say one of the other ways that many Christians engage in is also allowing somebody, trying to, at least the intention is to let somebody else into your mind, which is prayer.
Oh yes.
You're letting God in.
You're allowing the perception of a deity, and I'm not saying deity doesn't exist.
No,
I'm not going down that road, but
The two aren't mutually
opening yourself
exclusive.
up for it. Yes, and you're opening yourself up for it, so that this way you begin to feel it flow through you.
Well, I mean, in theory, prayer is supposed to be a
perception.
two-way street,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
At least not, I mean, optimally.
Generally speaking, it's very rare. There are actually a handful of, Christianity traditionally calls them mystics, which are people, they speak to God and God speaks back.
Right.
The most famous example of which in the 20th century was a absolutely fascinating individual by the name of, at the time, Padre, now Saint Pio.
Padre Pio.
Oh, Pio.
Yes.
I've heard of him.
the number of miracles, he was canonized by the church. The number of miracles associated with the man is as long as both of my arms and Brian's as well. And yes, supposedly God spoke to him and he heard it, like you hear me now.
I want to see somebody from this century actually end up doing the same.
We'll probably get one sooner or later.
Yeah, I mean, here's hoping. Most widely broadcasted, two-way phone call known to mankind.
But keep in mind, the people that usually get that are monks and monastic orders or nuns, because I can't remember Dame Julian. There was a woman from the Middle Ages who actually is also recognized as a very famous mystic. But they're people that sequester themselves and spend all of their time, like, if they're not eating, they're praying and meditating and reading and focusing on God.
Saint Joan of Arc.
She is fascinating.
Oh, yes.
There's an episode, too.
Well, you want fun thing with Gene? Mm-hmm. Do you know who wrote one of the most... despite the fact he's famous for his disdain for Christianity, wrote one of the most love letter biographies of her?
Really?
Mark Twain.
Oh, yes.
Mark Twain was... I mean, other people who wrote about her at the time accused him of infatuation with Jean.
What's Saint Joan?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
And realistically...
Jeanne d'Arc.
Yeah, Jeanne d'Arc, which is the French version. Mm-hmm. She is just... whether you believe that what she did came from God or from herself, I will say for the record, yeah, I think it came from God.
Oh, yeah.
But... it's for a peasant woman in France during the 100 Years' War to pull off what she pulled off is truly remarkable.
That took divine intervention, let's face it.
Yeah. And one of the common questions I've been asked when I've had this discussion with people, and probably some of our listeners because again, I always assume our listeners are smart, because they usually are, is, well, why did God intervene? And when I was thinking about this on my own, I thought of what I thought was a pretty good solution. I still do, which is, Jean was an instrumental part in ending the 100 Years' War. That's a pretty... It's a 100-year war, for frack's sakes. It needed to end.
Yeah.
For another thing, though...
It was largely a big family squabble. That's the saddest part of it.
But here's another thing, and a much more profound influence she's had on history since Jean. The idea of the people's right to rule. The importance of freedom, liberty, the inspiration for both the French and the American Revolution began with her, because it was a squabble about, do the French get to have their king, or do the English get to insert their king?
Yep.
To which the French said, no, 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 no. I don't think so, monsieur. Very simple.
And yes, she heard... Actually, the difference being Jean did not hear the voice of God, she heard the voice of saints and angels.
Why not? Either way, it's the intermediaries.
True, but it's a little different when it's like, no, it's the actual... Then again, we can get that's a whole other thing we can get into about...
interpretations and viewpoints.
And also humans being able to hear the voice of God without dying, which traditionally we can't.
I believe that Alan Rickman said it best. If I was to listen to the voice of God, your head would explode.
And folks, if anyone out there has seen, and if you haven't, go see it, because it's a wonderful movie, the movie Dogma. Metatron is taken from Judaic mythology. What Alan Rickman says about Metatron is accurate to the original Jewish sources.
Yes.
Everything there... Kevin Smith did a very impressive amount of research into that comedy.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
He was going to have Alan Rickman on the damn movie. You better do your research.
And George Carlin.
Of course. Well, it's George.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, Metatron is not a transformer.
Nope.
Kill him. Kevin, he's closer to you. It is Megatron, not Metatron.
It's the angel Megatron. I just want to see somebody do that at some point. Just,
Starscream.
Somebody
throw that
I'm trying to
out
remember who. Somebody made that joke.
Don't look at me. I'm not that bad.
Turns into a giant smite gun, like blam.
Actually, I'm guessing Supernatural probably made that joke.
Oh gosh, no.
Well, I remember like Curtis Armstrong saying that. They're like, when they said something like, have you heard of The Darkness? And they're talking about some big plot thing, and he just looks at him and he goes, the band?
Oh my
Well,
goodness.
because of course Metatron winds up as a character played by Booger in Supernatural.
Hey, you can't knock that, man. It was awesome.
Yes, it was.
He was awesome.
Booger is awesome.
But you gotta give it to Sam and Dean for finding the humor in folklore and mythology. It's like Raphael, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Archangel.
Yes.
Hey, Asbot.
Enough said. Enough said.
And of course, as always, we've wandered a little bit off topic.
But it's all right.
Yeah. But so
Oh, yeah, you got it right.
we're coming up near the end of the show.
Oh, okay.
There is one
You wanna
other
get it or you
topic
want me to get it?
I wanted to touch on briefly, just because.
Go ahead.
I'm just trying. I was trying to figure out what was going on.
We're getting our next sponsor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
The next
Nord.
sponsor paper.
So one last thing I wanted to touch on briefly that just happened,
Back there.
that is demonology related and Satanism
Mm-hmm.
related, is the unveiling of the Baphomet statue. For those of you who have forgotten or possibly repressed it,
Oh,
the Baphomet statue that was supposed to be built. What was the courthouse? I'm completely blanking on the courthouse.
Oklahoma or
Yeah, it
no,
was
it
something
was
like that.
Alabama or Arkansas. Gene, it's behind the desk.
Arkansas, yes. So
Yep.
there we go. Satanic Temple put up in the Arkansas state capitol, no less.
Sorry.
A statue of Baphomet, the goat devil basically Satan statue.
Which I love. I thought it was a great statue.
It was. You
Well,
know, it's an
let me
awesome looking
say-
statue, I have to admit. You know?
Personally, I find the statue sort of silly. I highly approve, and you know what? They say the same thing about what I believe, and
I think it was kind of meant to be a little
yeah,
silly.
No, it was definitely meant to be silly.
Yeah.
Let me be clear. I find the Satanic Temple, and more specifically the Church of Satan's beliefs, a little silly. They find my beliefs a little silly, and it's all
fair.
good.
Everybody's entitled.
My personal opinion of the statue, quite honestly, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Because
Fair is fair.
they have the Ten Commandments there. I'm okay. You know what? I'm okay with them having the Ten Commandments there, as long as they let everybody else be there too.
Yeah.
And allowing the Satanic Temple to build the statue, because what the First Amendment says is it's not that you can't have religion tangentially related to government. Government can't favor one religion over the other.
Exactly.
So if the Satanists want to put a statue up, you let them. If the Buddhists want to put a statue up, you let them do it too.
Islamics.
Either everyone does it or no one does it. I actually kind of like to let everybody do it, because let's acknowledge the social importance of religion to everyone, and that's not just me. That's all of you people. And you know what? Put stuff up for secular humanism and atheism as well.
Sure, why
Comparative
not?
religion should be taught in schools because
Oh, absolutely.
it's important to know what all the major beliefs of the world are.
You relate to people much better when you understand what they believe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you realize we're all human.
I will
and
also-
a lot of it all boils down to very similar.
I will also say for my fellow Christians, if you oppose the Satanic Temple, I highly recommend you look into what they actually do,
Yeah.
because they're actually pretty awesome.
Thank you.
The Satanic Temple the Church of Satan is a different thing than the Satanic Temple for one thing. And the Satanic Temple sees itself as I understand it, as an update of the Church of Satan.
Yes.
And it is honestly, it's more of a political and social movement than a religious one. Since for one, like the Church of Satan, they're atheists. They do not worship the Judeo-Christian Satan at all, nor do they acknowledge that he exists.
Right.
Meanwhile, what they are doing, in schools like particularly Bible Midwest, things like that allow for corporal punishment. Well, if your religion forbids corporal punishment, they can't spank you in school. Well, if the kid says, I'm a member of the Satanic Temple, my religion forbids it, and all the kid has to do is say, I'm a member of the Satanic Temple, and I am in favor of not allowing children to be abused.
Agreed.
Exactly.
And they do a lot of anti-sexual abuse work. I approve of that too. And the other thing we should all approve
It's
of.
one of the key tenets of
Yeah.
Satanism too, is that you will not impose your will upon somebody that cannot express it right back to you.
Yes, and I completely approve of that. And one of the things they did that I thought was just wonderful, because it's tongue-in-cheek, but the man deserved it, was doing the ceremony over the grave of the jackass who started the Westboro Baptist Church.
Oh, God.
good.
So his mother's grave, they did her what they called the pink ritual to turn her gay. After death. It's clearly a joke. It's clearly tongue-in-cheek. But after all the stupid freaking protests of military funerals and the disgusting, despicable things that he has, man has said, he totally deserved it.
I mean, I'm a natural pacifist. I don't believe in hurting anybody, and I'm not a violent individual. But
that's peaceful protest.
That particular person, one way or the other. Thank God he was nowhere near me.
Yeah. But and you know what? Thank God, particularly because the reality is they wanted you to take a swing at them, because then they get to sue you and the state and the police department and everyone else.
Yeah. It's such a corrupt.
Meanwhile,
church.
What the Satanic Temple did with that ritual, they made fun of them, they embarrassed them, they probably pissed them off.
Good.
But they did nothing illegal and nothing violent. So there's nothing they could sue over.
Oops.
Fred Phelps, that's
yes, there you go. This is the king of the jackasses.
And sadly, this is wrapping up the time that we have. Before we get into our last sponsor, I do want to remind folks, please keep in mind, at this point, we actually have the ability to go to 2 hours again.
Yes, it would be awesome if you actually helped us do that.
So you would be, instead of us saying goodnight now, you'd be listening to us go talk to you even longer and have more time for phone calls and other cool things.
Oh, the horror.
I promise, I get funnier.
He really does. But the reality is, radio costs money. We're currently all fairly broke and scraping together to get the money to do it week to week.
Yeah.
We need support. Patreon.com/paranormal or /demonology, patreon.com/demonology, link in the description. $1 or $2. If 100 people gave $1, that's $100. It makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a show.
That is.
That's like a 2-hour show. For 100 people giving $1.
Please.
If you do more, and there's a bunch of rewards and things, and if you're looking at that and it's like none of these rewards fit me, shoot me an email and we'll figure something else out.
Yeah, for something.
If you actually donate, I will do an entire show.
I'm nothing but this voice.
Oh, God.
I promise you it will be in this voice.
And we're going to get
hypnotize Brian in this voice.
We need to arrange with Gene so that we can do this, but we need to do an after promo to start a new GoFundMe or Kickstarter, specifically to get us the second hour. I'm thinking not today, just because we're all going to want a little bit of time to prep for that.
Yeah.
We should figure out what we're going to actually say.
Who's going to talk when and what we're going to say.
Yes.
Rather than our usual.
You will donate.
But that's going to do it for tonight. Baron finishes us off with the last ad.
Sounds golden. Everyone is concerned about internet security these days, from governments to major corporations. Even the average internet user should be concerned about who is seeing your online information and how that information can be used. NordVPN is the answer you've been looking for. A VPN is a virtual private network to protect your IP address so that your online activity is protected by a military-grade encryption. The way it works is, you connect to Nord's protected network, and then they connect to the internet. It's a layer of protection between you and all the viruses, malware, and snoopers out there. Nord works on all devices too, not just computers. Your phone, tablet, whatever, up to 6 devices at a time, regardless of what operating system they use. Nord works them all. Access all the internet content you want, streaming media, websites, and social platforms. Nothing is restricted on Nord, so it's a great way to get around those pesky firewalls at work, or maybe if you live in a country that is not so internet friendly. They have easy plans starting at a month for $11.95, down to 3-year plans for as low as $2.75 a month. Check it out risk-free at nordvpn.com, and you'll be glad you did. I will also point out one of our common tiers for Patreon is we'll do an ad for you.
Yes.
If you have a product or a website or a business you want advertised, Brian wrote that ad, so we could have Brian write an ad and Baron read it. You get what you just heard if you want to throw us some money.
Pretty sweet.
Indeed.
But that is going to do it. Remember to tune in next week. It's probably going to be us continuing getting into the dirty and gritty of the Satanic Ritual Abuse Panic and the Satanic Panic in general, which is near to dear to all of our hearts because of D&D is of the devil.
Yes.
Dice on the devil.
If Virgo's is available, although I suspect she won't be next week, we'll have her on and we'll just push it back a week. Follow us on Facebook, the Paranormal Encyclopedia, or on Twitter, the Paranormal Encyclopedia Hour, or show, excuse me, the Paranormal Encyclopedia Show Hour.
Yes.
Which is a mouthful of a name.
We need to write that
I had
up.
to make sure it wasn't taken.
Fair enough.
It works.
But you can listen to it, you can respond to us there, kevinm.paranormalencyclopedia@gmail.com. I'll put in my email in the description below. Questions, comments, concerns, if you want to be a guest, or for that matter, if your house is haunted and you need help, let us know. But that's going to do it for tonight. This is Kevin Mears.
Brian McKinley.
Baron Voltage.
Saying good night and God bless.
Live long and prosper.
Avoid lightning rods.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.